Roger Federer said it in 8 words and the entire tennis world stopped breathing. She is the future of world tennis. That was the bombshell nobody saw coming. But here's what nobody told you. The story behind why Federer said it is even bigger than the quote itself. A 20-year-old girl from the Philippines, a name most of the world couldn't pronounce 2 years ago. And now the greatest tennis player who ever lived is pointing at her and saying that one. Before you scroll away, ask yourself this. What does it take to earn the blessing of a god? Stay with us because the answer will change the way you see Alex Eala forever. To understand why Roger Federer's words hit like a thunderbolt, you first have to understand where Alex Eala came from and more importantly what she was told she could never become. The Philippines is not a tennis country. That's not an insult. It's just the reality that every Filipino athlete who has ever held a racket has had to wrestle with. Tennis in Southeast Asia has long been the sport of privilege, of country clubs, of children who grow up watching Wimbledon on satellite TV and dreaming dreams that their coaches quietly tell them are too big. The Philippines produces boxing champions, basketball legends, resilient, unbreakable warriors, but Grand Slam champions. That conversation had never even started. Alexandra Mano Ayala was born on May 23, 2005 in Quezon City, Philippines. She is the daughter of businessman Mike Aya and Riza, a former national swimmer and longtime CFO of one of the country's biggest telecommunications companies. Her maternal grandfather, Bobby Manigo, put a racket in her hand when she was 4 years old. That detail matters because the foundation of everything you are about to hear was laid on a quiet court in the Philippines by a grandfather who believed in something the rest of the world wasn't ready to see yet. At 13 years old, Alex Eala moved to Spain. She enrolled at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca, the same institution that has shaped some of the toughest competitors on the planet. Think about that for a moment. 13 years old, thousands of miles from home, a foreign language, a foreign culture, and the task of becoming a professional tennis player in a country where tennis royalty was not just expected, it was demanded. She graduated from the academy in 2023. And between those years, she wasn't just learning forehands and backhands. She was building a mental armor that would later help her stand on the biggest courts in the world and not flinch. By 2022, the world got its first real hint that this kid was something different. At the US Open Juniors, 17-year-old Alex Eala won the girls' singles title, becoming the first Filipino to win a Grand Slam Junior Championship. Back home in Manila, people wept in living rooms. Fathers texted their daughters. A nation that had been waiting for a tennis champion for its entire modern history had finally found one. But a junior title is just a prologue. The real story hadn't even begun. Her early professional years were humbling. Rankings in the 200s, qualifying losses, early exits in ITF events that nobody streams and few people watch. The kind of grind that breaks most young players before they ever get to the stage where the lights are bright and the crowds are loud. In 2024, her ranking hovered around 143 at its best, respectable, but nowhere near the conversation of someone who would one day make Roger Federer reach for his phone. And yet, she kept going every single day. Because here's the thing about Alex Eala that her stats don't fully capture. She was trained in the same academy that gave the world Rafael Nadal's relentlessness. That work ethic wasn't just absorbed, it was installed. What happened next? It would shake the entire WTA tour. And nobody predicted it was coming this fast. You think you know the Cinderella story? You don't. Because in 2025, Alex Eala didn't just enter the ball. She set the entire palace on fire. March 2025, the Miami Open. One of the most prestigious hard-court events in the world, sitting just below Grand Slam status in terms of prestige and importance. The draw is stacked. The favorites are established. The narrative is already written, or so everyone thought. Alex Eala entered Miami as a wild card, ranked 140th in the world, the kind of player that tournament officials give a spot to because they want Filipino fans filling the stands. A crowd draw, not a genuine title contender. At least that was the assumption. Then she played in the first round. She defeated her opening opponent. Fine, wild cards do that sometimes. Then in the second round, she beat Yelena Ostapenko, a former French Open champion. People started paying attention. Then she beat Madison Keys, the reigning Australian Open champion. The whispers became shouts. And then she did something that made every tennis analyst on the planet do a double take. She beat Iga Swiatek, world number 2, 5-time Grand Slam champion, the dominant force in women's tennis for years, straight sets. As a wild card, Eala registered back-to-back top 10 wins over number 5 Keys and number 2 Swiatek in the same tournament. That had never been done by a Filipino player in WTA history. That had barely been done by anyone at that ranking in recent memory. The stadium crowd in Miami wasn't prepared for it. Filipino fans who had traveled thousands of miles, some of them spending savings they probably shouldn't have spent, erupted in scenes that went viral within hours. Filipino workers in the United States, parents, overseas workers, students, they were all watching on their phones in break rooms and offices and living rooms at strange hours of the night, and they were crying. Actually crying. She carries the weight and the support of an entire nation with her every time she steps out on court. That line written by ESPN had never felt more literal than it did during those days in Miami. She eventually lost in the semifinals to Jessica Pegula 7-6, 3-6, 7-6 after more than 2 hours of battle. But by then it didn't matter. The result was secondary. What mattered was what she had already done, what she had already proved. A 19-year-old from the Philippines had walked into one of the biggest tournaments in the world with a wild card and had beaten two of the greatest players of her generation back-to-back. Following her Miami 2025 result, she made history by becoming the first player from the Philippines to reach a WTA 1000 semifinal and the first to enter the WTA World Top 100 ranking. And somewhere watching all of this unfold was Roger Federer. Retired since 2022, but never truly gone from tennis, a mental figure, an ambassador, a man who still watches the sport with the eyes of someone who played it at its highest level for 2 decades. And when he saw what Alex Eala did in Miami, he reached out, not with a press release, not with a formal announcement, with 8 words that set the internet on fire. She is the future of world tennis. That was it. 8 words. But from Roger Federer, 8 words are a lifetime of validation. The tennis world went absolutely insane. But wait, because here's where it gets complicated. When Federer's words started spreading, not everyone was celebrating. Some legends pushed back. Some analysts questioned it. And Alex Eala herself, her response was something nobody expected. The moment Federer's words hit social media, the response was unlike anything the WTA Tour had seen in years. Not since Coco Gauff walked onto the Wimbledon court as a 15-year-old and beat Venus Williams had a young player created this kind of global shockwave. But this was different because this wasn't just a teenager beating a legend. This was the most respected figure in tennis history publicly anointing a successor. 79% of Talking Points fans picked Alex Eala as their favorite over Coco Gauff and 89% picked her over Emma Raducanu. Those numbers are extraordinary. They tell you something about the emotional investment the global tennis audience had already developed in this young Filipino player and how Federer's words poured gasoline on a fire that was already burning hot. But with massive praise comes massive scrutiny. And the debate that erupted online was fierce. One side pointed to the numbers and said, of course, look at what she did in Miami. Look at her ranking trajectory. She reached a career-high WTA singles ranking of world number 40 on February 9, 2026, making her the highest-ranked Filipino in tour history and the first Filipino to break into the top 40, defeat multiple top 5 players, reach a tour-level final in the Open era. The data backed the hype. The other side, more cautious and more experienced, raised legitimate questions. One viral run in one tournament doesn't define a career. GOAT conversations require Grand Slam titles, multiple ones. Consistency over years, not months. And when you look honestly at Ayala's Grand Slam record up to that point, you see early exits, first rounds, qualifying losses. The gap between a brilliant WTA 1000 run and Grand Slam dominance is enormous. And it's exactly where most promising careers stall out forever. Coco Gauff weighed in, not dismissively but thoughtfully, when asked about Eala at the 2025 Italian Open. One journalist asked Gauff how much Ayala's recent surge in attention reminded her of what she experienced early in her own career. Gauff's answer was measured and generous, acknowledging that Eala was handling the spotlight with remarkable composure for someone her age. Coming from a player who had lived through that exact kind of pressure herself, it meant something. The WTA Tour itself seemed almost caught off guard by the magnitude of Ayala's popularity. Alexandra Eala is one of the biggest rising stars in professional tennis. The Filipino attracts massive crowds wherever she goes. However, the powers that be hadn't done enough to capitalize on her popularity, often scheduling her at unusual times on smaller courts. That frustration from fans was real and documented. Here was a player capable of filling stadiums, and tournament organizers were sometimes treating her like a mid-tier draw. That changed in Dubai in February 2026. Tournament organizers finally made the right decision and gave her the spot she deserved. Eala was scheduled last on center court, the most coveted slot in the sport, and she delivered. In Dubai, Eala beat Jasmine Paolini, a top 10 player and two-time Grand Slam finalist. She beat STUNS. She reached the quarterfinals before losing to Coco Gauff. But not before her career-high ranking climbed to world number 32, an astronomical rise in less than a year. The debate about whether Federer was right was becoming less and less debatable. And all of it, every headline, every viral clip, every argument on social media, kept circling back to the same question. Who exactly is Alex Eala? And can she handle what's coming? Here's what the numbers don't tell you. Here's the part of Alex Eala's story that will make you understand why Federer's words weren't just praise. They were a warning. Every great story has a chapter nobody wants to talk about. For Alex Eala, that chapter is written in the margins of the matches she lost, because the losses are just as important as the victories, and understanding them is the only way to truly grasp the scope of what Federer saw in her. The 2026 Australian Open, her first ever main draw appearance at that particular Grand Slam, the moment every Filipino fan had circled on the calendar, and it ended in heartbreak. Despite taking the first set 6-0, Aya ultimately suffered a first-round defeat to Alicia Parks, ranked 99th in the world, 6-3, 6-2. Parks overwhelmed her with pace and a powerful serve. After dominating the first set completely, Aya couldn't maintain that level. The American fired 12 aces. That match told a deeper story. Against elite and even lower-ranked opponents with big serves, she cannot afford to rely solely on her return game to control matches. Adding more bite, variety, and confidence to her serve will be crucial, especially in moments when she needs a free point to stop momentum or close-out sets. That's the honest assessment. That's what separates a great player from an all-time great player. The serve. The ability to win free points at critical moments. The ability to sustain first-set intensity across 3 complete sets against opponents who study you, who adjust to you, who enter the match having mapped every pattern and tendency you have. Then there was the Dubai quarterfinal against Coco Gauff. Aya said after the heavy 6-0, 6-2 loss, "There's definitely still a gap between me and Coco." That quote was striking, not because it showed defeat, but because it revealed self-awareness in an era of social media performance and carefully managed public images. A 20-year-old openly admitting there's a gap between her and one of the best players in the world shows a level of intelligence very few young athletes possess. It's the same quality Federer himself was known for throughout his career. Not arrogance, but awareness. The ability to see yourself clearly, acknowledge the work that still needs to be done, and then return to it without drama or excuses. Analysts note that to reach greater success, she must strengthen her serve, adapt more effectively across different surfaces, and handle pressure moments with greater tactical variety. Like many aggressive baseliners, she struggles at times against counterpunches and retrievers, particularly on clay, where slower conditions demand patience and smarter adjustments. These aren't weaknesses that disqualify Aya from future greatness. They are the specific areas of growth that stand between where she is right now and where the legends of the sport have been. Every player on that list had gaps at 20 years old. Serena Williams had gaps at 20. Federer himself had gaps at 20. The question is never whether the gaps exist. It's whether the player has the character to close them. And that's precisely what makes Federer's words so powerful. When he said she is the future of world tennis, he wasn't saying she had already arrived. He was saying he recognized in her the rare combination of talent, mental strength, and hunger that creates champions. He spent 20 years looking at greatness in the mirror. He knew what that reflection looked like. He saw it in Alex Eala. There is a moment in every great athlete's journey when they say something in public that cuts through the noise and reveals exactly who they are. For Alex Eala, that moment came quietly. Not on a grand stage, not in a press conference with 50 journalists, but in a small interview room after one of the most exhausting and emotional weeks of her professional life. When asked about Roger Federer and what his legacy meant to her, Ayala's answer was both humble and revealing. She said, "The thing I admire most about Roger is his grace on the court and off the court as well. His composure and the way he carries himself and the image he has built over the years." Grace, composure, image. Those aren't the words of a player chasing trophies. Those are the words of someone who understands that greatness is not just about what you achieve. It's about how you carry yourself while achieving it. It reflects the mindset of someone already thinking beyond rankings and titles. Someone building something bigger than just a career. She added something equally meaningful, that her idol Federer's retirement reminded her that even the greatest are, in the end, human. She said, "These great players blazed a trail for so many young tennis players and young athletes, and their departures felt like a reminder that they are also people." Think about what that means coming from someone now described as a potential successor to that very legacy. She is not blinded by the hype. She is not intoxicated by the applause of millions. She is a young woman who looks at the icons she grew up watching, who saw them retire, and who understood that the window of greatness is limited, and that therefore every day of work, every session on the practice court, every quiet and unglamorous morning of hard work matters. Every appearance in a Grand Slam main draw, every upset, and every match strengthens a growing belief back home that Filipinos belong in world-class tennis. That weight, the responsibility of representing not just herself, but an entire nation's belief in its own potential, is something most tennis players never have to carry. Federer played for Switzerland, but Switzerland had already produced champions, already earned a seat at tennis's table. Eala is building that table from scratch for her country, and the people of the Philippines feel it. A Filipino worker in Abu Dhabi said, "Since the Pacquiao era, no Filipino athlete has captured the nation's collective spirit the way Alex Eala has." That comparison to Manny Pacquiao, one of the most beloved athletes in Philippine history, says everything about the magnitude of what Eala has already become at just 20 years old. And she hasn't won a Grand Slam yet. Let that sink in. The impact she has made on a country of over 100 million people, the pride, the joy, the sense of global belonging she has given them. And she hasn't even reached the peak of her potential. What happens when she does? What happens when Alex Eala lifts a Grand Slam trophy? If Federer's 8 words broke the internet, that moment will completely stop it. We've reached the stage of the story that separates good players from legends. The stage where the real question is asked, and it's not about rankings, trophies, or titles. It's about legacy. Stay with us for one more chapter, because this is the one that matters most. Alex Eala's journey is not just a tennis story. It's a story about what happens when talent meets courage, meets sacrifice, meets the unshakable belief that you belong somewhere, even when no one around you has ever been there before. Federer's bombshell wasn't just praise. It was recognition, confirmation that what millions of Filipino fans have believed for years is real, and that the rest of the world is finally catching on. The question we leave you with today is this. Drop your answer in the comments because this debate is only beginning. Is Alex Eala on her way to becoming not just the greatest Filipino tennis player in history, but one of the greatest women's players this sport has ever seen? Or is the hype moving faster than the results? The courts of 2026 and beyond will give us the answer. But right now, the greatest player who ever lived says yes.